The medical pod beeped its final warning before shutting down completely. Inside the crystalline chamber, Marcus Chen's vital signs flatlined for the third time in as many hours. The Valtorian medical staff exchanged looks that needed no translation across species. This human was dying, and there was nothing their advanced technology could do about it. "His biology rejects our treatments," Senior Physician Krell announced, his 4 manipulator arms falling to his sides in defeat. The radiation exposure was too severe. Even for a species as resilient as humans, this is beyond recovery. The accident had been catastrophic. A containment breach in the ship's quantum drive had flooded 3 decks with exotic radiation. Marcus had been conducting routine maintenance when the breach occurred. By the time the emergency protocols kicked in, he had absorbed enough radiation to kill a Valtorian 10 times over. What made it worse was the timing. The research vessel Cosmic Dawn was 3 months from the nearest station, traveling through a sector of space where rescue was impossible. The rest of the crew, 27 beings from 6 different species, could only watch as their human engineer slowly died. Captain Thenos, a towering Bracthian with scales that shimmered like oil on water, stood before the medical pod with his head bowed. Humans were rare in deep space. Most preferred to stay within their own growing empire, still young by galactic standards. Marcus had been an exception, eager to learn from older species, always curious, always helpful. "How long does he have?" Thenos asked quietly. Krell checked his instruments. "Hours, perhaps less. His cellular structure is collapsing. I'm surprised he lasted this long." What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that Marcus Chen was still conscious. Trapped in a body that refused to respond, he could hear every word. The pain was beyond description, a fire that consumed him from the inside out. Every cell screamed, every heartbeat was agony. He should have been dead. The medical data said so. The scanners confirmed it. By every measure known to galactic medicine, Marcus Chen had already crossed the threshold from which no biological organism could return. But humans had a secret, a trait they rarely spoke about, even among themselves. It wasn't technology or intelligence. It was something far more primal, far more dangerous. It was the simple, stubborn refusal to die when death seemed certain. That deep within Marcus's failing body, something stirred. His immune system, battered and broken, began to adapt. Human DNA, that chaotic mess of genetic code that had puzzled xenobiologists for decades, started to rewrite itself in real time. Cells that should have died instead mutated, finding new ways to survive in conditions that violated every biological law. The change was invisible to the Valtorian scanners. Their instruments were designed for orderly, predictable biology. Human biology was anything but orderly. 3 hours after Krell declared him terminal, Marcus's heart started beating stronger. 4 hours after that, his brain waves normalized. By the 8th hour, new tissue was forming where old tissue had been destroyed. The medical staff noticed the changes gradually. At first, and they dismissed the readings as equipment malfunction. Impossible, they said, the human was too far gone. But the readings persisted, strengthened. By the 12th hour, Krell stood before the medical pod with all 4 arms trembling. "This is not possible," he whispered. "His cellular regeneration rate has increased by 3,000%. He's not just healing, he's evolving." Captain Thenos leaned closer to the pod. Inside, Marcus's eyes snapped open. They were different now, flecked with gold where they had once been simple brown. The radiation that should have killed him had instead triggered something ancient in his genetic code, something written there millions of years ago when humanity's ancestors learned to survive impossible odds. The pod door hissed open. Marcus sat up slowly, every movement deliberate. The pain was still there, but it was distant now, manageable. He looked at his hands and saw the faint glow beneath his skin, the radiation his body had somehow learned to process instead of being destroyed by it. How do you feel? Krell asked, his voice shaking. Marcus swung his legs off the pod and stood. His muscles felt different, denser, stronger. Like I died and came back wrong, he said quietly. Then he looked at the captain. How long was I out? 14 hours, Thanos replied. We thought we lost you. So did I. Marcus flexed his fingers, watching the golden glow pulse beneath his skin. What's our status? The question caught everyone off guard. Here was a being who had just survived the unsurvivable, and his first concern was the ship. We're stable, Thanos said carefully. The quantum drive is offline. But we have conventional engines. We're proceeding to Outpost Meridian at reduced speed. Marcus nodded and started toward the door. Krell moved to stop him. You need rest. Observation. We don't know what's happening to your biology. I know what's happening, Marcus interrupted gently. My body is adapting. It's what humans do. We break, and then we become harder at the broken places. He paused at the door. I need to check the drive. That radiation didn't just hurt me. It damaged the containment systems. Before anyone could respond, the ship's alarm system screamed to life. Red emergency lights flooded the corridors. The voice of First Officer Xenia, a Teltharan with crystalline features, came through the communication system. Captain to the bridge immediately. We have multiple contacts approaching at high velocity. Configuration matches Kareth raider vessels. The Kareth. Pirates, scavengers, and worse. They operated in the lawless regions between established territories, preying on damaged or weakened vessels. Somehow they had detected the Cosmic Dawn's distress, its damaged drive signature like blood in water. Captain Thanos rushed toward the bridge with Marcus following close behind. The medical staff called after them, but Marcus ignored their protests. He could feel the changes still happening inside him, his body continuing to adapt, to strengthen. The bridge was chaos when they arrived. 7 Kareth vessels surrounded them, each one bristling with weapons that would tear through the research vessel's light shields like paper. They're hailing us, Xenia reported, her crystalline fingers dancing across the console. And audio only. Put them through, Thanos ordered. A rough, gurgling voice filled the bridge, translated through the ship's computers. Research vessel, you are damaged and defenseless. Surrender your cargo and technology, and we will allow your crew to survive in the escape pods. Resist, and we will take what we want from your wreckage. Thanos looked at his tactical display. The Cosmic Dawn was a science vessel. Its weapons were designed to clear asteroids and take samples from planetary surfaces, not fight off 7 warships. Even at full power, they wouldn't stand a chance. With the quantum drive offline and conventional weapons barely functional, surrender seemed like the only option. What are our combat capabilities? Marcus asked quietly. The tactical officer, a young Valtorian named Shen, I pulled up the data with obvious reluctance. Minimal. We have 3 working particle cannons, shield integrity at 40% and falling, and no maneuvering capacity beyond basic directional control. And they don't know that, Marcus said, a strange smile crossing his face. They're cautious, waiting to see if we'll fight or run. We can do neither, Thanos said heavily. I will not sacrifice the crew in a battle we cannot win. Marcus turned to face the captain, and everyone on the bridge took an involuntary step back. The golden glow beneath his skin had intensified. His eyes burned with a light that wasn't entirely natural. Captain, request permission to take engineering control of all ship systems. For what purpose? To do what humans do best, Marcus replied. Survive, and fight. Thanos studied the human for a long moment. He had served with many species across his long career, but humans still puzzled him. They were not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most advanced, but they had something that others lacked. A certain madness, perhaps. Or maybe it was just stubbornness refined to an art form. Granted, Thanos said finally. But Marcus, we have civilians aboard, scientists, researchers. I cannot allow— You won't have to allow anything, Marcus interrupted, already moving to an engineering console. Just give me 5 minutes. His fingers flew across the controls with inhuman speed. The radiation in his system, the very thing that should have killed him, had enhanced his neural processing. He could see patterns in the data that had been invisible before. I had solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable. The quantum drive was damaged, but not destroyed. The containment breach had flooded the system with exotic particles, particles that were slowly destabilizing. In 3 hours, maybe 4, the entire drive would collapse in an explosion that would vaporize the ship. But for now, for these precious minutes, those particles were still active, still energized, still incredibly dangerous. And Marcus could feel them. His altered biology resonated with the radiation, giving him an awareness of the quantum fields that no instrument could match. Rerouting auxiliary power, he announced, his voice steady, channeling overflow from damaged systems into a feedback loop. Shen watched his console with growing alarm. Human, Marcus, those readings are unstable. You're creating a quantum cascade, Marcus finished. Controlled, directed, and about to become very unpleasant for our friends out there. The Kareth ships were closing now, their patience exhausted. Weapons charged, ready to cripple the research vessel and begin their harvest. They're firing, Xenia announced. Not yet, Marcus whispered, watching his improvised system build power. The radiation in his body synchronized with the quantum fields, his nervous system acting as a living conduit between the damaged drive and the ship's emergency systems. Energy weapons lanced through space, tearing into the cosmic dawn's shields. Alarms screamed as hull breaches opened on the lower decks. The ship shuddered under the impact. Shields at 15%, Shen reported, his voice tight with fear. Now, Marcus said calmly, and pressed a single control. The quantum drive didn't restart. Instead, it did something far more unexpected. The unstable particles that had been slowly accumulating, building toward catastrophic failure, were suddenly channeled through every power conduit on the ship. The emergency systems that Marcus had reprogrammed acted as a focusing lens, directing the exotic radiation in a tight, controlled beam. The beam caught the nearest Kareth vessel dead center. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the raider ship simply ceased to exist. Not exploded, not destroyed. It just wasn't there anymore, its matter scattered across 17 dimensions by quantum forces that had no right existing in normal space. The bridge crew stared in silence. Even the Kareth fleet hesitated, their aggressive formation breaking apart in confusion. What did you do? Captain Thenos asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Used their own greed against them, Marcus replied, already adjusting his makeshift weapon system. They wanted our quantum technology. I gave them a demonstration. He looked up at the tactical display. The drive is venting exotic particles. I can't sustain this for long, but I can fire twice more before the system collapses. After that, we'll be dead in space. The Kareth commander's voice crackled over the communications system, no longer confident. What weapon is this? Our sensors detect no energy signature consistent with— Marcus opened a channel, his voice cold. You're right, this isn't a weapon. It's a dying quantum drive. I'm just pointing it in your direction. He paused. Leave now, and you'll survive. Stay, and I'll share our death with you. It was a bluff. Mostly. The quantum cascade couldn't be sustained for more than 2 additional pulses, and the aiming system was crude at best. But the Kareth didn't know that. They had just watched one of their ships erased from existence by a technology they didn't understand, wielded by a species they had underestimated. The raider fleet broke formation. Within seconds, they were fleeing at maximum velocity. Their courage evaporated. As soon as they were beyond scanner range, Marcus collapsed. The golden glow beneath his skin flickered and died. the connection to the quantum field severed, leaving him drained in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. Krell caught him before he hit the deck. "Get him back to medical," the physician ordered. His readings are destabilizing again." "The drive," Marcus mumbled, fighting to stay conscious. "Need to vent the remaining particles safely." "Already on it," Shen reported from the engineering console, following the protocols Marcus had established. "Controlled venting will be complete in 30 minutes. The drive is dead, but it won't take us with it." Captain Thanos knelt beside Marcus as the medical team arrived with an emergency gurney. "You weren't meant to survive that radiation," he said quietly, "let alone fight using it as a weapon." Marcus managed a weak smile. "Human specialty, Captain. We're very good at not dying when we should." His eyes closed. "And when you try to kill us, we get creative." They carried him back to medical bay, where Krell and his team worked for hours to stabilize his condition. The quantum radiation had been purged from his system, but the changes it had triggered remained. Marcus Chen would never be quite the same again. His DNA had been rewritten at a fundamental level, adapted to survive conditions that would kill any normal human. 3 days later, Marcus stood on the observation deck, watching stars streak past as the cosmic dawn limped toward Outpost Meridian on conventional engines. His recovery had been faster than anyone predicted, though Krell insisted on daily examinations. Captain Thanos found him there, 2 cups of human coffee in his hands. He had learned that humans prized the bitter beverage, especially in moments of reflection. "Your report on the quantum incident is causing quite a stir at Fleet Command," Thanos said, offering one of the cups. "They want to study what you did. I'll potentially develop it as a defensive weapon." Marcus took the coffee with a nod of thanks. "It won't work. What I did required direct neural interface with quantum fields in a state of collapse. No sane person would expose themselves to that level of radiation voluntarily. But you survived it? I got lucky. Or unlucky, depending on how you look at it." Marcus sipped his coffee, staring at the stars. "The medical scans show permanent changes to my cellular structure. Krell says I'll likely live longer than a normal human now, heal faster, process toxins more efficiently. But there's a price." "What price?" "I can still feel it sometimes. The radiation. Like a ghost in my nervous system. It changed me on a level I don't fully understand yet." He turned to face the captain. "I'm not entirely human anymore. Not entirely anything else either. Something in between." Thanos was quiet for a moment. "Does that frighten you?" "Terrifies me," Marcus admitted. "But fear is another thing humans are good at managing. We feel it, acknowledge it, and then do what needs to be done anyway." "That is what I witnessed," Thanos said. "You were dying. Any rational being would have accepted that fate. But you fought against it with a determination that defies logic." Marcus smiled slightly. "That's the secret, Captain. Humans are terrible at accepting fate. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. We don't have natural armor or built-in weapons or psychic abilities. What we have is stubbornness. An absolute refusal to quit when quitting would be the sensible option." "The Kareth will spread the story," Thanos said. "Yad of the human who survived lethal radiation and turned a dying ship into a weapon. It will change how others see your species." "Good," Marcus replied. "Maybe they'll think twice before attacking vessels with human crew members." He finished his coffee and set the cup aside. "When will we reach Meridian?" 18 days at current speed. Fleet Command is sending a proper escort just in case the Kareth decide to return with reinforcements." "They won't," Marcus said with certainty. "We made them afraid. Fear is a powerful motivator. They'll remember what happened here, and they'll choose easier targets in the future." Over the following weeks, as the cosmic dawn made its slow journey to safety, the story of what happened spread through the galactic network. The details varied with each retelling, but the core remained the same. A human engineer, dying from radiation exposure, had somehow survived. More than survived, he had fought back using the very force that should have killed him. Scientists demanded access to Marcus's medical records. Military strategists wanted to understand his improvised weapon system. Xenobiologists published papers on human adaptive biology. The name Marcus Chen became known across a dozen sectors. But Marcus himself remained unchanged by the attention. He continued his work in engineering, helping repair the damage to the cosmic dawn. He was polite with the researchers who interviewed him, but provided no special insights beyond what was in the official reports. The truth was simpler than anyone wanted to believe. He had survived because humans evolved to survive. They came from a world that tried to kill them in 1,000 different ways. And they had learned to adapt, to overcome, to keep moving forward even when forward seemed impossible. When the cosmic dawn finally docked at Outpost Meridian, a crowd had gathered to see the human who had defied death. Medical facilities stood ready to study his condition. Military officials wanted to discuss defense applications. Scientists had prepared hundreds of questions. Marcus ignored them all. He walked off the ship with his small bag of personal belongings and found the first transport heading back to human space. He had seen enough of the galaxy for a while. It was time to go home, to rest, to try and understand what he had become. But before he left, he spoke briefly with Captain Thenos one final time. Will you return to deep space?" the Bracthian captain asked. Marcus considered the question. "Eventually. This is where I belong, out here among the stars, learning from other species. But I need time to adapt to these changes, to understand my new limits." "You have no limits," Thenos said quietly. "That is what frightens me about humans. You refuse to acknowledge that any barrier is permanent." Marcus smiled. "That's not quite true, Captain. We have limits. We just haven't found all of them yet." He extended his hand in the human gesture of farewell. "Thank you for giving me a chance to serve aboard your ship. I learned a lot." Thenos grasped the offered hand, careful of his strength. "I learned as well. I learned that humans are more dangerous than any weapon, more resilient than any armor, and more valuable than any treasure." He released Marcus's hand. "When you're ready to return to deep space, you will always have a place on my crew." Marcus nodded his thanks and walked toward the transport terminal. As he moved through the crowded station, other beings stepped aside, watching him pass with a mixture of curiosity and caution. The human who had survived the unsurvivable. The engineer who had turned death into a weapon. But Marcus Chen didn't feel like a hero or a miracle. He felt tired, changed, and uncertain about the future. The radiation had rewritten his genetic code, given him abilities he didn't ask for and consequences he didn't fully understand. Yet as he boarded the transport and found a seat near a window, watching Outpost Meridian shrink into the distance, he felt something else too, a sense of purpose. That he had proven something important, not just about himself, but about all of humanity. They were newcomers to the galactic community, young and inexperienced compared to species that had walked the stars for millennia. But they brought something valuable to the table. A fierce determination to survive, to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, and to face impossible odds with courage born from millions of years of evolutionary stubbornness. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers. Ancient empires rose and fell. Technologies advanced beyond comprehension. Powers moved in the darkness between stars. And somewhere in that infinite expanse, humans were making their mark. Not through superior weapons or ancient wisdom, but through simple, stubborn refusal to quit when the universe demanded they give up. Marcus Chen closed his eyes as the transport jumped to faster-than-light travel. His body still hummed with residual energy from the quantum radiation. His cells continued their slow adaptation to the changes that had been forced upon them. He was different now, something new. But he was still human, still stubborn, still willing to fight when fighting seemed pointless and survive when survival seemed impossible. That was the human way. That was their gift to the galaxy. And as word of his survival spread across the stars, other species began to understand a fundamental truth about humanity. They weren't just another civilization exploring the cosmos. They were survivors on a level that defied conventional understanding. Beings who looked at death and said, "Not today." The Kareth Raiders learned this lesson the hard way, and so would others in time. Humans were not to be underestimated, not because they were invincible, but because they refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Marcus Chen had proven that beyond any doubt. He wasn't meant to survive that radiation exposure. By every law of biology and physics, he should have died within hours of the containment breach. But he survived. And then, when all logic said he should lie down and accept death with dignity, he had done something even more remarkable. He had fought back. That was the human difference. That was what made them dangerous, unpredictable, and valuable in equal measure. In the years that followed, Marcus would return to deep space. He would serve on other vessels, teach other engineers, and save other lives. The changes to his biology would continue, making him something unique in the galaxy. But the core of who he was never changed. He remained Marcus Chen, human engineer, who had looked death in the face and simply refused to accept its verdict. The galaxy was learning what Earth had always known. Humans were not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but they were the most stubborn. And in a universe full of dangers, that stubborn refusal to quit might just be the most valuable trait of all.